spooks and ghosts and goblins, we have a horror story today.
Alien bomb.
Bomb? Oh, yeah. Was it a bomb?
It exploded.
It exploded. But I mean, like, my car could explode. I wouldn't call it a bomb.
I would.
Only if you do it deliberately. What makes something that explodes a bomb?
It explodes.
But I mean, like, okay, so if I take a hot coffee pot and I put it in cold water accidentally and it explodes, because it will, would you call that a bomb?
I guess it explodes with technology. That's
but
what I call a bomb.
Bombs were invented before technology. All you have to do is pack a bunch of... I think a bomb has to be something intentional.
I disagree.
I think a bomb has to be something that you blow up because you want it to blow up.
What if you accidentally set a bomb? Then
it's a bomb.
Is it not a bomb anymore?
If someone invents a bomb, if someone creates a bomb, and you're like, I have this bomb, and then you accidentally touch the button on the side and it explodes and kills a bunch of people, yes, you still exploded a bomb. But I wouldn't say you bombed a place. I would say you accidentally set off a bomb, or you unintentionally bombed a place, but you weren't like a bomber. Now, if you have a device that is explosive, but it's not created to be a bomb, but it's explosive, and you do something to it that causes it to explode on purpose, I would say you've bombed a place, but you didn't use a bomb.
Wrong.
I would say you used something else as a bomb.
You've turned something into a bomb. It becomes a bomb once you use it to explode a place.
Okay. But it's not, we don't know if what he had in his hands, well, we don't think what the character we're referring to had was a bomb. He didn't create a bomb. It was something else that he used as a bomb.
Mm-hmm. But it was still a bomb in that moment.
I feel like I'm a bomb and I'm exploding this podcast. I'm blowing up our spot. So I don't know what that expression means. Are you ready to talk a little bit about The Autopsy by Michael Shea?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. I'm Phil.
And I'm Willow.
And it's Del Toro time.
It's Del Toro time.
So off, so wrong, so not together. It was like
Mine's Parasite.
It's like you are saying it with someone else. Like there is another person in your room doing a podcast with you.
Maybe there is.
No, that's not fair.
And our today's mystery reader is...
Who can kill a child?
Me.
Dr. Winters stepped out of the tiny Greyhound station and into the midnight street that smelt of pines and the river, though the street was in the heart of the town. But then it was a town of only 5 main streets in breadth, and these extended scarcely a mile and a half along the rim of the gorge. Deep in that gorge, through the river ran, its blurred roar flowed perfectly distinct between the banks of dark shop windows. The station's window showed the only light, save for a luminous clock face several doors down, and a little neon beer logo 2 blocks farther on. When he had walked a short distance, Dr. Winters set his suitcase down, pocketed his hands, and looked at the stars, thick as cobblestone in the black gulf. That was me, reading a book to you. Was it like you were a child again?
No.
Oh, I thought you died for a second. You were all like collapsed forward, and like I couldn't see the rest of your face. There you go. I didn't want that to be the last way I saw you. Hey everybody, this is The Dark Descent. The next story in The Dark Descent by David G. Hartwell. This week we are covering what again?
The Autopsy.
By?
Michael Shea.
Michael Shea.
Michael Shea.
Yes. What can you tell? Okay, no, normally I would make a joke about how little you know about the author, but I actually want to skip doing that because Michael Shea died about 6 years ago, but his death is still pretty fresh for a lot of people. You still read things from writers who are mourning the loss of Michael Shea.
Mm-hmm.
It really hit the sci-fi fantasy world hard when he died. In fact, just last year, a tribute book came out that featured some of his work, but also just people writing about how much they love Michael Shea. It was quite an outpouring. He had a huge effect on the sci-fi fantasy community. He wasn't really like a Bradbury or an Asimov who wrote like 1,000 stories and who everyone's heard of and who've had a million adaptations of their work. He's still like, to your average reader, kind of a relative unknown, but to people in the sci-fi fantasy world, he was huge. He was a presence. He got his start in the 1970s. 1973, he published A Quest for Symbolists. He had read Jack Vance's dying Earth novel, The Eyes of the Overworld, in Juneau, Alaska. The story goes in a hotel lobby. He had just picked up this novel and read it. And then he was like, I really like this book. I'm going to write some fanfic. And so he wrote this, so he just sat down and wrote an entire novel set in this world. And then he was like, what do I do with it now? Well, I guess I'll just submit it for publication. So he did. And he submitted it to DAW Books, and they showed it to Jack Vance. They were like, this guy wrote a novel set in your world. And Vance was like, A, this is awesome. B, go ahead and publish it. C, I don't want any credit. D, this is an official sequel to my work. Until I say otherwise, this is the official sequel. So Michael Shea had the ultimate fanfic dream. He wrote a piece of fan fiction that the author was like, cool, this is canon now. And it was
nice.
It was the canon follow-up to The Eyes of the Overworld, A Quest for Symbolists, until years later, Jack Vance actually did write his own follow-up, so it fell out of canon. But it's still people were just like, yeah, this is a great novel. And so Shea went on to write just a ton of, not a ton, but a handful of super respected works. His big was Nift the Lean in 1982, which won the World Fantasy Award, and sort of started this whole the Nift the Lean series. And that was fantasy. And when you think of Michael Shea's fantasy, it's less like J.R.R. Tolkien and more contemporary. It's still set in fantasy worlds, but with a sort of a darker edge, a more cynical edge. Or he wrote a lot about thieves and scoundrels and that side of fantasy. It wasn't all about what you think of high fantasy. And then in 1982, I think, he wrote The Color Out of Time as a sequel to The Color Out of Space, and that really kicked off him delving into the worlds of Lovecraft and him taking Lovecraft's milieu and setting it among kind of real people. Lovecraft didn't really write about human beings. He wrote about characters who just sort of dawdled through his stories because he wasn't really big into emotions and stuff. And Shea was like, I'm going to get into psychology, not only of the main characters, but also of these creatures. These I don't want these creatures to be unknowable in the sense that we don't know what their motives are. I want their motives to be completely just out there and horrific and horrible. And I'm not going to pull any punches with the gruesomeness. I'm not going to pull any punches with the stuff that makes you squirm in your seat. I'm going to make you feel everything. But also, I'm not doing this just to get off on the horror of it. I want you to really feel stuff when I'm writing. As far as I can tell from what everyone wrote about him, he was just this fantastic guy. When he died, his wife Linda wrote, "It is apparent upon tracing Shea's," wait, no, that's the wrong one. She wrote, "He touched so many as a writer, as an English teacher, and as an immaculately honest and kind man. For those lucky enough to have known Michael, he radiated enthusiasm, wit, and laughter. A self-proclaimed hyperbolicer, his awe of the universe so naturally shone forth through his love of language. He was conversant in Spanish, French, and German, but loved and respected English most of all. Without effort and at the drop of a hat, he'd recite full poems from Thomas Eliot, Swinburne, and Shakespeare, his favorite. A wordsmith himself, Michael could not help but relish and convey the music of the words he read or recited." Michael published his first novel, A Quest for Symbolists, in 1974, and for all the years that I knew him, he wrote almost every day. Novels, short stories, and his first love, poetry, poured out of him through the very last day of his life. Some thought of Michael as reclusive, when in fact he was just old-fashioned, a writer's writer. Once a piece was perfect, he wanted to set it aside, forget it, and begin the next project. Michael was a loving father of two and my husband and best friend for 35 years. We will miss his gentle spirit and the window to the world that this generous man held open so widely for us all. And I think that sort of sums up everything I read about it, was that he was just this awesome guy who didn't write a whole lot. He didn't publish a whole lot, but what he did, people were just like, mwah. And this collection, The Dark Descent, which contains the Autopsy, a few people cited as how they discovered Michael Shea. So what can you tell us about The Autopsy?
It's spooky.
Yep. What kind of story is it?
Sci-fi horror.
But it starts off as neither of those things.
Does it not?
I mean, it starts off kind of as like a police procedural.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it
guess.
It almost seems like you're watching like an episode of CSI or something. Like you have this guy who's a coroner who's been called in to do autopsies on these 10 bodies. And because of, as you said, a bomb was set off and blowed him up, but good. But he's doing do you remember why he's doing the autopsies for, like who he's doing them for?
He's doing them for the sheriff, right?
But he's doing them for an insurance company.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. He's been given the task of proving that these guys didn't die on the job because it was in a mine. They died because of the bomb. So he's been tasked with discovering so that the insurance company doesn't have to pay out. They don't have to pay the families and say it was because it wasn't their fault. So they want to say that these guys died as a result of a bomber and not as a result of the mine collapsing on them. And so that's kind of his job.
Can I just say it? Can I just say it?
Yeah.
Screw insurance companies.
Screw insurance companies. Screw all of them.
Yep.
Yes. I mean, unless they're like, I was trying to think of like a good funny insurance company that we would all really need, but that doesn't exist. And I can't actually think of one. I was going to say love insurance, but that sounds like, I don't know what that would even be. Like if you get a broken heart, like they'll pay out, but then you'd have to prove that you had a broken heart and that would be terrible. So yeah, screw all insurance companies.
Yep.
Yep. So it's this guy. His name is Dr. Winters, and he has something living inside him. Do you remember what it is?
Cancer.
Yeah, stomach cancer that he talks to.
Mm-hmm.
And does that come into play really in the story?
No, but it shapes his behavior in ways that lead to interesting moments in the story.
How would you say it shapes? It shapes his behavior.
It shaped his behavior towards the alien. In the end there.
Mm-hmm. Like how so? Well,
the ending is him talking to it or communicating with it.
Yeah, it's we start off with he's this guy and he has stomach cancer and he's dying of stomach cancer, but he hasn't told anyone. And so he has this sort of like not a dialogue because the cancer doesn't talk back, but like a monologue that he's sort of like he's just always talking to the cancer and he's kind of comfortable now with it being in his body. It's this sort of passenger that he knows is going to be the death of him one day, but that he's just come to terms with, and so he has like a relationship with it. And it's interesting because cancer can be seen as a parasite, but this story ends up being about an actual parasite that he isn't cool with because the cancer at least lets him be who he is, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so he gets assigned the task. So there's also a serial killer. So wait, tell me about this serial killer.
Talking about Alan? Joe Allen?
Alan. If you're a fan of Jurassic Park 3, you'll get that reference. Alan.
Are we talking about Alan? Joe Allen?
I think so. There's a moment in Jurassic Park 3 where the character Alan Grant has a nightmare and he's on a helicopter and he looks over and there's a velociraptor in the helicopter with him, and the velociraptor looks straight at him and goes, "Alan." And then he wakes up and it's just a shot of a velociraptor saying the word Alan. That is probably the greatest thing that's ever been committed to film. If you haven't seen it, I strongly suggest you look up Alan from Jurassic Park 3. So, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Are we talking about Joe Allen?
The serial killer.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But how does that tie into this?
Well, he's the one who has the fake bomb.
Fake bomb. It's a real bomb, though, because it blows up. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
I'm going to shut this down.
So
that's the end of the podcast, everybody.
So people have been turning up dead in this mining town, this mining community. And they've pretty much narrowed it down to this one guy.
Is he a serial killer, or is he infested with the parasite?
I think he's infested with the parasite. I believe that's the case. I think it's... Is it the case? It's very...
I think so, because otherwise, what the hell is he doing?
Right, because the parasite infested this one guy, brought it to this town, changed its name. But the parasite retains use when the... Okay, so we're going to get to this, but this serial killer is in this town. The police corner him, or they find out who he is. He works at the mine. When he's coming out of the mine, he sees the police car. Meanwhile, one of the police officers has gone to the guy's house and found this weird sphere, this like metal sphere that he doesn't know what it is, and put it in the cruiser. When this guy, when Alan comes out of the mine, he makes a beeline to the cruiser, grabs the sphere, runs into the mine, and then presumably sets off the sphere. It blows up, kills 9 of the guys in the mine, including Alan himself. Including Alan. So serial killer is dead. That's what this autopsy is. And I think, well, why don't you tell us how this alien ties into all this?
Did it come down in a meteor?
Did it?
I think so. There was a meteor storm, and that's when they discovered that Sykes was gone.
Sex?
Sykes.
Who's Sykes?
Or Skies?
Alan.
What was his name originally?
Sykes.
His original name.
I'm going to hold on. I'm going to switch over to my...
It's Sykes.
Sykes. Alan Sykes?
Yes.
That's
no,
what they discovered.
What are you talking about?
Who's Alan?
Joe Allen.
Who's Sykes?
Sykes is Alan originally.
Oh.
That's his original name.
Right. He has 2 names. His real name is Sykes. He's been going by Joe Allen in this town. I know all this. I'm just making you work hard. That's not true. I don't actually remember some of this. This is an interesting story because a lot of it is a monologue by this creature at the end. And it gets very technical and kind of trippy when the creature begins monologuing. Right. So our main character, Dr. Winters, who is apparently good friends with this sheriff, is conducting these autopsies alone. And he begins autopsying just at random to some of the guys, his whole goal is to not, he's like, I'm dying. I'm not going to do anything for this insurance company. No matter what I find, I'm just going to say that they died from the collapse. They died from the mining collapse. That had nothing to do with the bomb, or like they weren't killed by the bomb. They were killed by the mine collapse. So he's just like, sure, what are they going to do to me? My boss will try to fire me, but I don't care. I'm dying. Like, I don't care what happens. So he's this really good guy. And he finally gets to one of the bodies and he cuts it open and he finds out that it has been like drained of blood. Is that it? There's like a hole in it and the hole goes to the heart. And he realizes that the lungs have been like collapsed they've been drained of blood. The heart has no blood. And he's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And he figures out that there's 2 bodies that have had this happen to them, and they were sandwiched, and sandwiched between them was this guy Sykes, the presumed killer. And that's when he sort of starts piecing together that they were drained after the collapse by this guy. Somehow he drained them of blood while he was lying there. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Yeah, probably.
Yes, probably.
Yes.
Yes.
It says, what was this world he lived in? Surely in a lifetime he had not begun to guess. To feed in such a way, there was horror enough in this alone. But to feed thus in his own grave, how had he accomplished it, leaving aside how he had fought suffocation long enough to do anything at all? How was it to be comprehended, a greed that raged so hotly it would glute itself at the very threshold of its own destruction? That last feast was surely in his stomach still. Right.
And so he's going to try to cut open Sykes to see if he can figure that out, but before he can do that, what happens?
He gets up.
Yes, he sure does. Sykes gets up. We have it. So it's not coming through in our conversation, but the story it starts off as very much like a serial killer story, like a crime story. Yeah. And then it goes into body horror and gore because he doesn't pull any punches on the descriptions of these autopsies or what happens to these people. And then when the body wakes up, you're like, is this a vampire story? Like a zombie story? Like what's happened? Like it seems like it's like, oh, it's vampire. Like it's some sort of like, I was thinking The Strain, like those vampires that are more like monsters, like creatures, and they have like
that are tongues. Literally parasites.
Yes. And so I was like, oh, is it a vampire tale? But then we discover that it's worse than that. It's a kind of an invasion of the body snatchers thing, but where like the body snatchers also like feed off of human blood and flesh and meat, because if he was killing people and draining them of their blood, but also chopping up the bodies, like butchering them. And he comes out, and we find out what's going on through this creature's monologue. And it's a monologue. Like, there are any young actors at home looking for a great performance piece, I suggest The Autopsy by Michael Shea. The creature's monologue. It's kind of like when the Frankenstein monster monologues, and it's just like, here's everything that's going on in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what tell me about this monster.
It seems to be like it's an alien. Some kind of like worm creature.
Mm-hmm.
I hate it.
It's kind of
this
gelatinous.
Is my worst nightmare.
It's like this.
Yeah.
It's gloopy.
Gloopy. And it's trying to come across as weak and unassuming.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor's like, so you killed these people, and the thing's like, no. I just hid inside this body. Please help me.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor's like, no. You killed these people, and you ate them.
Yeah.
And the creature's like, no, they were already dead. I only ate them because they were already dead. And the doctor says, no. You killed them all, including your tool, this man. What are you?
Yeah, and what is he?
Gross is what he is.
So what makes this alien interesting is that it inhabits the body, but it's not doing it just for sustenance. It's doing it because it loves to, like, it feeds off of our fear and anxiety and the fact, like, it has to terrorize us while it's inside us. Like, the people are well aware of what is going on the whole time this thing is in their body. It's just like their minds are shut away kind of in the back, and they just sort of have to experience everything this creature is doing. And then he makes them actually feel what he's doing. Like, it's torture. He's torturing the people he's inside, and that's part of his, like, he kind of gets off on that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's horrible.
Yeah, so the creature attacks him and knocks him out.
Mm-hmm. Creature attacks him.
Then there's a lot of stuff that happens.
They have this little showdown in the autopsy room, and the creature straps him down. He straps him down so he can't move, but he leaves, like, the guy's paralyzed except for his left arm, and he can, like, move his head, I think, because the creature's like, I'm gonna now put myself inside you, but in order for me to, like, sort of do a systems check, I have to leave your hand, like, part of your hand and, like, some other stuff unparalyzed, just so I can, like, run some tests when I get in. And the creature then lays down on the gurney next to him, cuts himself open with a scalpel, and lifts the parasite out of the body of Sykes and sends it on over to our hero.
But it takes a while, you see, because it has to move slowly.
It does have to move slowly. And he also cuts open our good doctor, who can't feel it, fortunately, because he's completely paralyzed and desensitized. But he says what? I thought
that he cut himself first.
The monster
or
cut
maybe
himself first.
No. Okay, I misread that.
So we're in this. We have this interesting conundrum because the creature is a parasite inside this body, and it's controlling this body. But as soon as the creature removes the parasite from its body completely, it won't be able to control that body anymore. And so it has to kind of do everything while it's in this compromised position, and that's where Dr. I can't think of his name.
Winters.
And that's where Dr. Winters gets his idea of what he can do personally to save, if not humanity, at least stall this. Because the creature makes it clear that he's not the only one of his kind. And he's not the only one who's a coming. Like, this could be a full-on invasion. We don't really know. We don't get the full story. But so what is Dr. Winters' big, like, what does he do? Do you remember what he does?
He butchers himself.
But he has to do it at the timing has to be right. And how does he get the scalpel? Like, that's the big like reveal.
I don't know.
In the splits, there's like a very brief moment of time after the parasite is removed from the body, that the body regains Sykes's actual original consciousness. And Sykes like moves enough so that he can hand the scalpel over to Dr. Winters. And the creature, the parasite, through this whole, while it is outside of a body, is now like blind and deaf. It can only just seek its new occupant. Its new body. It can't do anything. And so while the creature is working its way into Winter's, like the hole that it made in Winter's abdomen, Winters cuts his own throat, like basically his artery. He like just starts cutting away. He stabs out his own eyes. He stabs out his ears. Yeah, which he can't feel, fortunately.
Yeah.
And it ends. And he writes a message in blood for anyone who finds his body. Do you know what that was? Do you remember what that one was?
Mind parasite from Alan in me. Cut all till find 1500 GM mass nerve fiber.
Where does it say that?
It says when he had done, the message read.
When he had done, the message read that?
Yeah.
When he had done. Are you kidding me?
What?
Okay, so I read this story in my digital copy of The Weird by Jeff and Ann Vandermeer. In The Weird, it goes, when he had done, the message read, alien, in, me, cut, kill. Not mind parasite, FM alien in me, cut all till find, 1500 GM.
It says Alan. It doesn't say alien, it says Alan.
Oh, fine. It still doesn't say that. It's a completely different message. Everything else is the same, except for that part. Everything else is the same. So, as far as I can tell, for some reason, that's different, and I don't know why. Jeff and Ann Vandermeer, please explain the difference in the two versions of the Autopsy to us. This isn't the first time this has happened on this show.
No, it's not.
It's the version of Michael Shea's The Autopsy in David G. Hartwell's The Dark Descent is different from the version of The Autopsy that's in The Weird by Jeff and Ann Vandermeer. And Jeff and Ann Vandermeer are, they are top-notch editors and top-notch collectors of, The Weird. So I'm going to assume, let me see if I can find the beginning of this. Jeff and The Autopsy. See if it says anything in their book. Nope. I'm just befuddled. I'm befuddled at the turn of events that this is taken. But he does leave a message. He leaves a message. But he as his mind is going, that's when he stabs out his eyes, stabs out his ears, and slashes his carotid artery, so that the alien has no place to go. It's going to be stuck in his body now. It's not going to be able to control anything or see anything or hear anything. And hopefully people will come and just destroy his body. But he does say to the parasite,
I can't communicate with anyone either because he slashed his vocal cords.
That's right. But he thinks to it, welcome to your new house. I'm afraid there's been some vandalism. The lights don't work and the plumbing has a very bad leak. There are some other things wrong as well. The neighborhood is perhaps a little too quiet, and you may find it hard to get around very easily, but it's been a lovely home for me for 57 years. And somehow, I think you'll stay. And he has blood seeping out of his eyes, almost like tears. He's looking at the body of Sykes.
He's not
Joe
looking
Allen.
at anything.
Well, he's turned towards it, and it says his last moment before death was to smile. His last moment. So, kind of a bittersweet ending, because the guy was going to die anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And his last act was to kind of like take down this mind-robbing alien parasite.
I wonder what the alien's reaction to everything that just happened was.
I know. I wish we could at least get that.
Because if part of its feeding is on the torment of its victim, well, the guy's dead now.
Yeah. I've never seen a body snatcher scenario turn out this way. As well, the best way to get rid of a body snatcher is you just get rid of the body, even if it's your own. You make it so that it has no place to go. And I mean, I guess like Alien, Alien can kind of do that when they blast the alien out of the airlocks. Like, that's kind of this. You're depriving it of its it can't lay eggs and reproduce anymore if it's just out in the vacuum of space. That's really all you can do besides like incinerate it. So, but yeah, you don't usually get someone like sacrificing their own body in order to stop the alien like mind control parasite. I wish there had been a Star Trek where this had happened, where Kirk had to like stab out his own eyes.
Somehow I don't think that would have flown in the Star Trek community.
Where we're going, we don't need eyes to see. That's from Event Horizon.
Yeah, I remember that scene in Event Horizon.
He doesn't actually do that, but it'd be great if you actually saw Sam Neill stabbing out his own eyes with a scalpel. Yeah, so that's it's a dark story.
It's a good one though.
It is. He's compared to Clive Barker in the intro in David Hartwell's intro. He says Shea's cinematic effects compare favorably with such newer talents as Clive Barker. Newer talents when this was written, of course. Colorful and unflinchingly clinical. And this story uses some of Lovecraft's conventions more effectively than any other contemporary horror writer. Shea has been growing in strength for more than a decade and belongs already to the company of the best writers in horror today. Of course, that was written in the 1980s. But Jeff and Ann Vandermeer, why are you the Grudge facing me?
I was yawning.
It says Jeff and Ann Vandermeer write, The Color Out of Time is similarly an homage to H.P. Lovecraft's Color Out of Space that has its own unique appeal. At the short length, Shea has written several masterpieces, including The Autopsy, a Hugo and Nebula Award finalist. Clinical, precise, humane, and terrifying. And the Autopsy plays with the idea of demonic possession from a weird science fiction perspective. It's a possession narrative as well, and an exorcism narrative. It would be as if at the end of The Exorcist, Reagan had just exploded. But I guess, no, wait, that is how The Exorcist ends. He brings the demon into his body and then he kills himself. He jumps out the window. And the demon doesn't have anywhere to live. Very The Exorcist. But I do like that the Vandermeers wrote clinical, precise, humane, and terrifying. And it's that word humane that to me makes Michael Shea different than a lot of the splatterpunk writers who came out of the 1980s. The people who were just writing shockingly gory horror stories for the sake of writing shockingly gory horror stories. Because Michael Shea never forgets that he's supposed to be writing about that. If you don't care about these characters, then there's really very little meat on the story's bones. You're not going to hold the interest of many readers if they don't care about the people. And I think he really did well in making Dr. Winter a character that you cared about and you rooted for. Mm-hmm. So you think this was a good story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it was better? Yeah. Do you think it was better or worse than the last story we read?
What was the last story? The last story we read was really just nothing. There wasn't a lot in it.
How dare you? The last story we read was
our entire episode was about loose screws.
I never finished watching it. I never finished watching Loose Screws. I do find it interesting that in this episode we have not mentioned a single other movie, and in the last episode that was like the first thing we talked about, and then that's all we talked about.
Yeah, anyways, that's the story. It's great. I recommend it.
It is very good. But I think comparing it to The Crowd is fair because like The Crowd was written by a master of the craft, and it
was it?
Ray Bradbury, and it was a functional story with like a twist, but
it wasn't bad by any means. There just wasn't a lot of substance.
There wasn't, and it was what it was. It was just sort of a little episode, and this was a short story with a twist, but even if the twist hadn't occurred, it was still a fascinating read. And like, this was a character who I was interested in. And this whole milieu was something that I found just very, very captivating. And I liked the characters. I liked the sheriff. I liked that this guy, this small town sheriff, I liked that this coroner, it was just going about his job, like doing his job, fighting cancer, that having cancer gave him this unique perspective on life and on things inhabiting your body. And that when at the end he died, and I was actually sad about it, but then I was also happy that he got the final like fu to the creature. And I don't know, it's just it's a nice, it's a good, solid story. I totally agree with you. Solid story. Congratulations, Michael Shea. Your legacy is well deserved. Yeah. So what's the next story on the docket?
John Charrington's Wedding
John Charrington's Wedding.
by Edith Nesbit.
Yes. Yeah, we have not read anything by Edith Nesbit yet. People know Edith Nesbit as a writer of children's fiction, but she also wrote horror stories and ghost stories. So, and this one's really short, so I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's like a 10-minute read. So no complaints there, because the Autopsy was actually pretty long. It's a pretty good size. Yeah. It's a novella. It's you're gonna sit and read it. It's gonna take you a while.
It's 27 pages long.
The Nesbit? No, the Autopsy. I was going to
the
say
Autopsy.
The Nesbit's not that long. The Nesbit's like 5 pages long.
The Nesbit's 6 pages long.
So if you're looking for Michael Shea's work, if you want to read more of his stuff, the weird thing about several years ago, a bunch of his stuff was available on Amazon as ebooks, and I was like, well, that's great. But now it's not. Like, it's gone. But that's how I actually first read his stuff. I read Fat Face by Michael Shea, and like I just purchased it for like 99 cents, $1.99. And now there's just not that much out there. You can buy a collection of his Lovecraftian writing, of the stories set like in the Lovecraft universe, on like as a digital book. Where is it? Oh, I can't even find it. He had a really famous book called Copping Squid, but that's long out of print. But yeah, so you can find his stuff. But otherwise, like if you're looking for the Autopsy and Other Tales, if you're looking for Polyphemus, any of his stuff that's not Lovecraft related, you're gonna have to buy it used, and you might end up paying like $50 for a pocket paperback. You might end up paying $150 for a trade paperback just to get your hands on some of his stories, because it's just weirdly out of print. And he has 2 books, The Extra and Assault on Sunrise, that are available. Those are his like last 2 novels. And they're part of the Extra trilogy, which I don't think he ever finished. I think he only wrote the first 2 books in it.
There's a guy named Michael Shea who's also writing some tabletop gaming books, which is what I keep finding when trying to look for his stuff on Amazon. And it's getting real frustrating.
Yes, there are 2 authors named Michael Shea. Do not confuse it with the other Michael Shea. Demiurge is the one that's available, the complete Cthulhu Mythos Tales. It's also edited by S.T. Joshi, so somebody who knows their Lovecraft. But I recommend getting into Michael Shea. His stuff is worth reading. I would love to get my hands on the Nift series just to see what his fantasy is like. I've never read his fantasy, but I think he's a great guy. I think we are all the lesser for him not existing in this world anymore. So next week, Edith Nesbit. And what do you have on your plate? Anything fun coming up?
No.
Not a thing. You have any D&D happening? Any Dungeons and Dragons?
Hopefully. We didn't have it last weekend because it was Miles' girlfriend's birthday.
Oh, Miles' girlfriend.
I like her. She's nice.
Hey,
we all met at the same time.
Happy birthday, Miles' girlfriend, and many happy returns. Still get in the way of a good game. I have other shows. I have Deep in Bear Country, a Berenstain Bearcast. You can find that at berenstainbearcast.org. I have Pizza Toast, a Babysitters Club podcast, starting back up again this week. We're covering the 1990 Babysitters Club series, starting with Marianne and the Brunettes, and it's episode of the show. And I have Click It Cast, a Beverly Cleary podcast, which I haven't done in half of a year, but which we are picking up again so we can finish it off, me and my friend John McCoy. So if you like Beverly Cleary, that's also out there. I am so tired of doing podcasts that require me to read a lot of books. It's just...
We should get back to movies at some point.
We should, although I was just like, it actually takes a lot longer to watch a movie than it does to read most of these stories, so...
Yeah, but movies...
I know, movies. Movies are fun.
I already have to talk about books in 2 of my 4 classes.
Yep. And in fact, I'm going to be guesting on a podcast soon-ish, in a few weeks, and I'm going to have to read another novel in order to talk on it. Going to be talking about The Wizard and Glass, the 4th Dark Tower book on a friend's podcast. So I can't stop reading. Are we done? Are we done here?
Yes.
Thank you to
done.
Thank you to our reader, me, for reading the book out loud. Join us next time for Edith Nesbit. Send to us your favorite Edith Nesbit tales. Write to us on Twitter at Del Toro Time and tell us your favorite Edith Nesbit stories. And I'm Phil.
And I'm Willow.
And we'll see you when it's Del Toro time.
It's Del Toro time.
So off, so wrong, so not together.
Not to me.